Hello!
Hi,
Patrick Farrell, Master of Wine.
I'm Elle, wine newbie.
What we're going to do today is that we're going to talk about the mechanics of tasting wine. And it seems silly to bring up some of these topics, but they make sense that if you're going to taste seriously, then following certain steps is going to give you a better experience. And the whole idea is to have a good experience. We're going to talk about glassware. We're going to talk about temperature, things that you need to taste seriously, a piece of paper to write some things on. But let's talk about some basic rules of engagement. As human beings, we are accustomed to our own taste and smells. So somebody could have bad body odor, they could have bad breath, and be unaware of it. Also, if somebody's wearing perfume or cologne, they get accustomed to that smell. So they don't smell that on them, but other people can. So when you go to, let's say, a trade tasting, or when we had the Master of Wine course, we ask people, even though they should know better, most of them are in the wine trade, not to be wearing perfume or cologne, not to come in stinking, have some basic hygiene.
Take a shower.
Take a shower, to come equipped. At that time, we were having people bring their own glassware, stemware. When somebody's speaking, just basic courtesy is that you don't talk over somebody. You take turns speaking. If there's somebody lecturing you, listen to them. Don't be chatting it up. Anything else you'd want to hear about?
Do you smell my perfume?
I don't, though I'm also sit upwind from you.
It's lucky.
It's lucky. Temperature of the wine matters. Having a comfortable, quiet place matters as well. I can't concentrate if there's really loud sounds going on when I'm tasting. Actually, been in the Master of Wine exam where I've had people talking to themselves, muttering. I've actually seen people come in wearing headphones or earplugs. They didn't have to hear it.
They needed it?
Well, they thought they needed it. So let's talk about glasses. It's dealer's choice. Whatever makes you happy, use that kind of glass. But there are differences. In many parts of the world, people use a tumbler. Wine was an everyday beverage in much of the Mediterranean region, and many people just drank wine in a simple glass. What you come to realize when you start tasting seriously, that something does matter. You want to have a shape, and all these are reasonably shaped, a tulip-like shape, so that helps to collect aromas. Fine crystal producers in Austria and Germany, other parts of the world, that have entire lines of glasses based upon the shape. But before we get to that, let's talk about thickness. If we were to have two identical glasses, which we don't have here, one with a thicker rim and the other with a thinner rim, the one with the thinner rim is going to work better. It's a matter of the flow of the wine into your mouth. And then the change of the shape, some of it's to aerate the wine, some of it's to get the wine to different parts of your tongue to optimize the taste of the wine. One can get carried away and saying, oh my God, I need a glass for every different type of wine. And you don't. You need an all-purpose glass. This is a pretty good all-purpose glass. A smaller version of this would be a pretty good all-purpose glass. We had a saying when I was in medical school about stethoscopes. Now, you needed a certain quality of stethoscope, but after a bit, they got to be much more expensive. The improvement of what you would hear improved minimally. So the joke was that what was more important was what was between your ears than what was on your ears. And in the same way, putting a $100 glass in somebody's hand who's unaccustomed to tasting wine is not going to make them a better wine taster. As they become more skilled and more appreciative of fine wine, then yes, consider buying a $100 glass for a special occasion. Just a simple rundown. This is a tulip shape as well. This is more of a water glass or a brandy glass. Could you taste well with it? I'm sure. This type of champagne glass, arguably modeled after Marie Antoinette's breasts, doesn't work well. I would avoid it. The flute for champagne, we had spoken about this in different tastings. This could be used for either red or white. I think it's a Syrah glass, an all-purpose glass, a couple of different Burgundy or Pinot Noir glasses, and this is a Cabernet Sauvignon glass.
So if I pick one glass, should it be like those
Yes,
two?
either of those glasses, you'd be able to taste almost any wine. You can taste any wine with any kind of glass, but you would be able to appreciate the wine a bit better if the shape is better.
Right. This is my favorite one.
That's your favorite. Well, it's got
Pink one.
some pink one, I know. Let's talk about temperature. The temperature at which you serve wine varies upon the type of wine and the quality of wine. So we're talking about white wines. The better the quality of wine, the less you should chill it. As you chill down a wine, at a certain point, the fruit comes out better, alcohol is less apparent. If there's any volatile acidity, like vinegar in the wine, it becomes less apparent. So cool works really well with both red wines and white wines. As you get colder temperatures, the tannins in white wines, this would be tannins from some skin contact or tannins from oak aging, can become more apparent. As you get colder still, you get really ice cold wine, which can be refreshing on a warm day, but you start covering up some of the aromas and some of the flavors. So as we say, if you've got very mediocre wine that you're serving to guests at a party, we call chill it and swill it, meaning get it very cold and people are just going to be knocking it back and drinking it. But if you're going to be, let's say, wanting to critically taste white wine, if it's too cold, use your hands, and it can take a while to warm up really ice cold wine. As a rule, at least here in the United States, in restaurants, the white wine is served too cold, meaning sitting in an ice bucket. The ice bucket is good for chilling down the wine, but at a certain point, if it's a nice bottle, and hopefully I've ordered a nice bottle of wine in the restaurant, I take the bottle out and let it sit outside the ice bucket because I don't want it to get too cold. Similarly, red wine is often served too warm. Really fine restaurants have a dedicated space for wine and the temperature-controlled cellar. Most do not. And so sometimes the cases of wine are just sitting in some back room and it's bloody warm. And the worst thing you want to do is be buying, let's say I'm in a restaurant and I order a bottle of Pinot Noir. It's one of my favorite grapes, and the bottle comes out and it's warm and the wine's going to be out of balance. The fruit sort of disappears a bit. The alcohol is much more pronounced. And if you taste the wine, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm spending $60, $80, $100 or more. In which case, you're doing the wine, your wallet, and yourself a disservice. Yeah. So in that case, what I do, I ask for an ice bucket, and they usually look at me like I'm absolutely out of my mind.
He's the MW.
Yeah. But I don't say anything. You know, I don't break out the MW card unless somebody gives me a hard time about something. And then I pop the red wine in. I let it sit there for 5-7 minutes. And usually at that point, when I taste the wine, it tastes like a much more expensive bottle of wine because the fruit is bright, the wine is fresher in my mouth, the alcohol seems lower, the wine seems in better balance. For me, the perfect temperature for drinking a red wine is straight from the cellar. Wine's been at 55, 56 degrees in a wine cellar. To me, that's ideal. And then generally, when you're tasting critically, you don't want to be grabbing it by the bowl because you can theoretically warm the wine up. Let's talk about the order in tasting. As a doctor, when I would examine whatever part of the body, there was an order in which I did it, and that order ensures that you don't miss anything. So when I taste wine, critically, I always do things in the same order. The first thing I do, I'm going to look at the color. All too often, people bypass color, go directly to tasting the wine. They don't even smell it. A lot of things that I can get, or the wine can tell me based upon the color. So white wines tend to get more color as they age. They can also have deeper color if the wine's been stored in oak, if the wine has had skin contact, if the grapes had a mold called botrytis, can increase the skin color, if the wine's oxidized. So if the wine looks too dark to me, based upon how old the bottle of wine is, that's a warning flag for me. Some varieties are darker, white varieties. So Pinot Gris can be darker, especially in Alsace. Gewürztraminer tends to be darker in color. Red wines generally lose color as they get older, right? So white wines get more color, red wines lose color. Let's say we talk about thicker skinned grapes, so like Cabernet Sauvignon or Syrah. Those wines can be very densely colored. Often you can't see through those wines, and you may get color extending almost all the way. It's called the meniscus. When I tip the wine, and I'm going to be looking at that edge, and what I'm looking for in a red wine, I'm looking to see, does the color go all the way to that meniscus, to the edge, or does it stop short of that? Okay, that there's some clearing. Let's say we had the same wine from one producer. We're looking at a vertical. So we've now Cabernet Sauvignon from the Robert Mondavi winery. And we have 10 vintages. Vertical tastings are wonderful. So now the wines have been produced the same way. There's going to be some vintage variation. But that said, when you're looking at the color, the young wine is going to have purple, fairly dense purple garnet color. As the wine starts getting a little older, losing that purple over a several year period of time, you get more clearing at the rim. The wine then ultimately becomes garnet in color. And then with a little bit more time, that instead of this, the clearing at the rim, I start seeing some brick change, some slight orange at the rim. And that's a sign that the wine's getting older. Some varieties, it happens more quickly, like Sangiovese, some Riojas, Tempranillo, and Garnacha. So I look at the color, then I swirl the wine. And in the restaurant, when they present the wine to you, I'm looking for, is it corked? Meaning, is it smelling like dirty socks or a musty basement? In which case, the wine goes back. Does the wine smell overtly of vinegar? If I get vinegar, the wine goes back. Does the wine smell like nail polish remover, acetone? The wine goes back. Does the wine smell Brettanomyces, meaning smelling like gamey animal sweat or animal urine? Not an enticing thing. That could be a reason to send the wine back. So I'm looking for faults, but then I'm also looking in my mind, and when I'm tasting critically, I write these things down, the color. On the aromas, I'm looking, what am I smelling here? I have a friend who's a very well-known wine educator, Kevin Zraly. He always says, you know what Chardonnay smells like? It smells like Chardonnay. You know, some people talk about all these different fruits, and it's a way of trying to be more accurate. And so let's take a variety like Chardonnay. And Chardonnay, if it's grown in a cool region like Chablis, I may not get much in terms of the aromas. I may get a little bit of mineral, I may get a hint of apple, green apple, or a hint of lemon in the Chardonnay. Then as it gets riper, the Chardonnay is going to shift. You may have some pear. Riper still, you can get tropical fruits. So it's going to give you an idea as to how ripe the wine was. Looking for what flavors do I have there. And I usually write them down either in the order that I sense them or the order of which are the most intense aromas. And then I taste the wine. Now with taste is in part, when we're talking about what flavors we perceive, that is all smell. How am I smelling that? And so as you swallow the wine, called a retronasal route, so those aromas are going up into your nasal passages, and that's when you swallow the wine, and that's how you perceive if a taste of cherries or raspberries or lychees. Okay? Much in the same way as a child, if you're going to be given some bitter medicine, and Min as a pharmacist, you would know this, if you hold your nose and you swallow something, it won't block the bitterness, but it will block some unpleasant flavors. So in the tasting as well, there's many other things that I'm looking for in the tasting. I'm looking at alcohol level, I'm looking at weight in the mouth or body, acidity levels, bitterness, and astringency. Astringency being when, let's say you bit into a piece of unripe fruit and you get that, your cheeks are sticking to your gums.
But I thought that's a tannin.
That's tannin, but the tannin gives two different things. It gives bitterness and it gives astringency, and they're two different things. So in general, I had gone off the deep end in terms of how much depth I was going to go into. I get acidity on the sides of my tongue, sweetness on the tip of my tongue, alcohol, I'm feeling body in the mouth, but also I can get a bite in the back of my throat. I also get a different kind of bite in the back of my throat from volatile acidity, if it's vinegar. And then I'm trying to get an idea as to how long the wine is. Let's go over it again. So by color, I'm getting some idea as to age of the wine, type of variety. On smell, I'm looking for, first for soundness. Is it corked? Does it have volatile acidity? Brett. And then I'm also looking, what are the aromas that I'm getting there? And then when I taste the wine, I'm looking at, are there additional flavors besides the ones that I picked up on smelling? And then I'm going through this chemical analysis or structural analysis of the wine, where I'm looking at, is there sweetness? What's the body? Is it a light-bodied wine, a full-bodied wine, medium-bodied wine? Acidity level, alcohol level, whether or not there are any tannins. And then I'm looking at three things: balance, complexity, and length. Balance is in a white wine, does the fruit character, any sweetness in the wine, needs to be balanced by acidity and maybe some tannin. In red wines, you are going to have tannin, alcohol levels, and then balanced with fruit and sweetness. So you get acidity and tannin and alcohol levels. So that's balance. What's complexity? Complexity would be having multiple flavors in the wine. So if you get a wine that has one flavor, and it's fresh, bright, nice wine, that's great. But it becomes much better when you have 2 or 3 nice flavors in the wine. And if you can have 4 or 5, all the better still. And by length, meaning how long am I going to be still tasting that wine in my mouth after I spit it out if it's in a tasting or swallow it in a restaurant. It'd be the same thing with food. If you take a bite of food and it's got some wonderful different flavors and it feels good in your mouth and you swallow it and think, oh my God, I'm still tasting that piece of cheese or that dish. That's what you want to have. You want to have good flavors, plenty of them, and flavors lasting a long time. So the question is, does water matter? Initially, when I was tasting wine, my answer to the question would have been, bullshit, it doesn't matter. I was absolutely wrong. So I had gone to some tastings. What's fascinating is that your choice of water is going to influence your perception of wine. So I've got a glass of Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, no oak in it, nice wine. Now, I've tasted the wine without any water. Now I'm going to try just some bottled water with no bubbles. I'm going to taste that wine, and it's going to taste the same as it did the first time that I tasted it. So it's a neutral thing. Now I've got sparkling water. Taste the wine, taste the sparkling water, and what does the sparkling water have? So it's got bubbles, it's got carbon dioxide in it, and I'm going to get geeky here. Permission to be geeky? Okay, so the carbon dioxide that's in solution reacts with water and forms carbonic acid. So there's acidity in the sparkling water. And so I taste the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc that has nice acidity. I have the sparkling water. I retaste the wine, and now the wine is going to taste like it has less acidity. There's also some minerals in the sparkling water and some sodium that can make the wine taste less bitter. So if you've got a tannic wine, a tannic red or an oaked white wine, sparkling water is sometimes better. Bottled water that's neutral always works. And the worst is when you've got the chlorinated water. So I have a sip of chlorinated water, and it happens pretty quickly, about 5 to 10 seconds, and I now have this metallic bitterness in my mouth. So now if I were to taste that same New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, fruit drops out of the wine. So let's say that it had 100 points worth of fruit when I first tasted the wine. The amount of fruit that I'm now perceiving in the wine is going to be literally down to 20 or less.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. I hope you folks enjoyed that. Give us some thumbs up. Enjoy. Happy life, happy wine. Cheers.